2017. What a time to be alive. It was a very big year for video games. DICE's Star Wars Battlefront 2 would release and be absolutely massively successful in time, not to mention a little indie game called Fortnite Battle Royale would drop in the fall of 2017, and Call of Duty, for the first time in years, was leaving behind the jetpack futuristic era of COD and going back to its roots in a more boots-on-the-ground game with the title Call of Duty World War II. For a while, Call of Duty found itself in an era where every single game was in a far future setting with advanced tech and movement and weaponry, which a lot of fans had felt at this point that it had strayed too far from Call of Duty's original identity. The studio that really started the whole jetpack era in the first place was Sledgehammer Games with the release of Advanced Warfare, yet it would also be Sledgehammer Games to be the ones to then break that streak. By this point, Call of Duty had nailed down the formula of what made them so appealing to millions of players: a story-driven single-player campaign, an online multiplayer experience, and a zombies mode to go along with it. Even though Zombies was Treyarch's baby, the other developers had experimented with it on their own at certain points, and Raven Software being mostly responsible for Exo Zombies, whereas Infinity Ward was doing their own flavor of what that mode could be with IW Zombies. But by this point, just like the brand as a whole, World War II Zombies aimed to return to its roots a little bit. After the very fantastical themes of Black Ops 3 and the extremely unserious and lighthearted fun of Infinite Warfare, COD Zombies was beginning to lose its edge a little bit, its grit and its groundedness, what a lot of people felt World at War Zombies did so well at. World War II aimed to recapture that more atmospheric and haunting feelings of zombies from years past. Yet there was one major difference. You see, World at War Zombies was never exactly trying to be an outright horror game. Yes, World at War Zombies is creepy, and there are some scary elements in their own right, but as described by Jason Blundell, the creative lead on Zombies on JrRizzo, he describes their goal for the tone to be more of aspirational horror rather than a true, genuine horror experience. However, I would argue that Call of Duty World War II was actually the first Zombies mode that took it a step farther and actually went for a pure horror vibe instead.
I have built more than just a new kind of soldier. I have created the devil himself.
Army of the Dead was the first of the leaks that anyone ever saw about World War II Zombies and the general direction that the game would be heading in. It became very clear pretty fast that Sledgehammer Games was going for a very scary feel for zombies that hadn't really been seen for quite some time, if ever, really. One of the nice things about Call of Duty in the past was that before the studios were so collaborative, where all of the studios worked together on the new game, back then you used to get really distinct visions and ideas for what the Zombies mode is and could be. For example, Exo Zombies is virtually nothing like Infinite Warfare Zombies, despite them both being takes on the non-Treyarch formula, but they're made by totally different minds and thus different visions. And so I thought it would be fun to go back to Call of Duty World War II Zombies and take a look at everything that made up this incredibly unique and very interesting experience. This isn't merely a case of looking back at something with pure nostalgia, because World War II Zombies has some serious flaws, and it can be a pretty divisive game in its own right. But I also think it sits in this really interesting position in time where this was one of the last Zombies games to ever come out before the modern Call of Duty era would be ushered in. And that means that there are a lot of choices, gameplay decisions, maps, systems, and so on that I could never truly see happening the same way ever again. And so the question is, how well does World War II Zombies hold up today?
Good to see you all again. We've had quite a ride together. Berchtesgaden, the Fuhrer's own stash. Perhaps your finest hour, Captain Jefferson.
Anytime I'm taking Nazis down the peg is my finest hour. Besides, these bastards had a Vermeer hanging next to a Valkenburg. Sure, they're both Dutch, but wrong damn century.
Olivia, your field work at Neuschwanstein led us to over 6,000 pieces stolen from private collectors in France.
The Nazis have taken so much from us all. This art belongs to the people.
And who can forget the Merker's salt mine?
Yeah, I know what I did, but hold your applause. I'd rather try knobbing a rolling donut before I bust my arse with your pennies again. It's not worth it, mate.
Duly noted. Which brings us to Middleburg and the current operation. Dr. Fisher?
10 days ago, we received a dossier. Material smuggled out by a young Austrian scientist who's reconsidering his loyalties. In it, he provides the location of a hidden bunker, where Dr. Straub and Colonel Richter have been collecting some peculiar pieces. Whatever they found, it's being used to power some kind of experiment.
You have no idea what you're dealing with, do you?
Your mission is to seize that relic. Everything else is on a need-to-know basis.
Is it just me, or does it seem that we're a wee bit late to the party? I didn't sign up for this shite.
None of us did.
But here we are, and you have your mission just as I have mine. To find and rescue the scientist who risked his life to get us this intelligence. Klaus Fischer, my brother.
I'm in antiquities, darling, not search and rescue. Best of luck.
What the hell was that?
I told you this was bugger! Austin told you!
As with any brand new Zombies project not made by Treyarch, each developer is going to have their own ideas for the gameplay and the story, having nothing to do with what came before. This storyline is set in World War II. Shocking, I know. It's centered around a character named Marie Fisher, Olivia, Drosten, and Jefferson. This playable cast of 4 characters were not only brand new to us, but also featured an entirely celebrity crew comprising of David Tennant, Elodie Young, Catherine Winnick, and Ving Rhames, aka the Arby's guy. Oh, also and Udo Kier, I don't want to forget him. These acting talents they acquired for this game really did help sell the more serious and terrifying setting that the game takes place in. And what's really interesting about this is that Sledgehammer went so far as to make an actual prologue experience for Zombies, introducing not only our characters but also the world they inhabit. I find the prologue level of World War II Zombies to be pretty fascinating, as it was the first attempt ever to create some kind of narrative starting position in a Zombies game, where before you were kind of just thrown into a map and you had to figure it out on your own. The prologue in this case begins when the train crashes and Marie is thrown out into the snow-covered woods. This playable section not only creates a little bit of tension, but is also meant to teach you some of the basic gameplay mechanics and new systems that World War II was introducing. At some point, you're going to come across a shovel that's inside of a tree stump, and you can pick it up, and then after getting your first Zombies jump scare, you'll then have to go try it out on an unsuspecting zombie. The melee system has been overhauled in World War II. With a melee weapon, you can do a light, normal quick attack like you're used to with a traditional knife, or you can hold down the aim button and do a heavy attack, which makes the animation way longer, but you'll be able to scavenge some items for doing this. So for instance, maybe some ammo or grenades or even extra points, or jolts as they're called in this game. You make your way through the gate and then into the house. At this point, you're tasked with survival until you can escape. This is the most basic form of the survival gameplay you're given to get a new player familiar with the gameplay loop. And eventually, after a couple of rounds, you're actually given the option to escape the house and then head towards Middleburg. And normally, the prologue would end there and then you'd be ready to jump into the actual game. But Sledgehammer were really mindful of creating a secret world and Easter eggs for the community to solve, so much so that the prologue prologue has secret characters and challenges that can be unlocked by surviving past round 20 in the prologue section, something that the average player would probably never think to do or even try. Despite the prologue level being quite small, it is pretty effective, and it's a nice appetizer into the game's main map offerings, and we've never really seen anything else quite like this in another Zombies game, like a small playable level that's meant to introduce the story in the world before you actually jump into the main parts of the game. So it's a pretty unique part of the experience. Believe it or not, World War II Zombies was honestly the first game to attempt what we now consider to be many of the modern Zombies gameplay mechanics. For example, field upgrades have been a staple of Zombies since Black Ops Cold War, yet you could argue that World War II tried this role-based ability approach first. You start by selecting an upgrade. These include Camouflage, which works a lot like Ether Shroud, keeping you invisible to zombies, but it depletes faster if you fire your weapon. There's also Frontline, which makes all zombies target you, but you deal extra damage for that duration. Then there's Free Fire, which gives you temporarily unlimited ammo and bottomless clips. And then finally, Shell Shock, which knocks zombies down in a radius and then stun locks them in place. You have one of these 4 base abilities to choose from, but you can also apply additional modifiers that you unlock as you play the game. These are very similar in a way to Black Ops 7 Zombies augments. There's a huge amount to select from as you do your Raven research paths. Some are just general buffs, like making power-up spawns more frequent or having more base reserve ammo on you, but some can be class-specific buffs. For example, Frontline has a buff where instead of double, you'll actually deal triple damage instead. Some of these modifiers are genuinely useless, if I'm being honest, while others are game-breakingly powerful. But I will say that there isn't a one-size-fits-all meta. Honestly, there's opportunity to use almost all of the major abilities in some map or situation. I would say probably except for maybe Shell Shock, as that is by far the least useful one out of all. There is additionally some pretty basic weapon customization, including cosmetic, but also attachments in-game, very similar to how Black Ops 3 weapon kits were, allowing you to add stuff like extended mags, red dots, and so on. Nothing too broken or just outright insane, but small and handy buffs to make weapons perform just a little bit better. Unfortunately, since this takes place in a post-Black Ops 3 world, we do have microtransactions, and there are these consumables that you can apply in-game, but also they made self-revives an item that you can only acquire out of rolling supply drops. Lovely. One of the things you might have noticed is, as I've been going through these menus, is that the UI and player navigation is very messy. This is actually one of the worst aspects of World War II Zombies looking back at it, and I have to admit, it's not necessarily all Zombies' fault, as the UI of World War II across the whole game was always a disorganized nightmare, but Zombies does suffer a lot from this, especially coming off the incredibly simple and easy to navigate menus of BO3 and IW Zombies. I have legitimately seen mobile games with less messy UI systems. Once you spend enough time with it, you will learn how to quickly navigate it, but that doesn't excuse the fact that it is objectively a very sloppy user interface. And it does even impede some of the gameplay in a very strange way, which I'll get more into a little bit later on. Besides this more role-based ability and loadout-centric approach to the game, World War II Zombies also made some more controversial changes. Black Ops 4 often takes the blame for being the game to get rid of the traditional Juggernog perk, but in reality, it was actually World War II Zombies that not only removed a standard Juggernog machine, but also implemented the first ever armor system into the core Zombies gameplay loop. Typically, Cold War Zombies gets pinned with the blame of the implementation and introduction to armor in Zombies, but let's not forget where it truly originated from. This is also where many of World War II Zombies' pain points stem from as well. While we're on the topic of perks, without a normal Juggernog machine, you realize that World War II Zombies doesn't even have that many perks to begin with. It has, and I'm not even going to try to say the German names, so I'm just going to use the ones that everyone knows. It has Quick Revive, a melee-based perk, which was first seen in Infinite Warfare, Speed Cola, Stamina Up, which are both red machines, by the way, and have kind of similar looking logos, so it's easy to get these two mixed up, Double Tap, and finally Electric Cherry. It's a pretty small selection of perks to start out with, but it feels even smaller now because no new perks were ever added to the game, even with additional DLC. So many of what could have been brand new perks probably got siphoned off to be Raven research upgrades for those abilities. But I always felt like this was one of the weakest aspects of World War II Zombies was its perk selection and lack thereof. As far as armor is concerned, it's handled in a very different way compared to what we've grown accustomed to in modern zombies. Nowadays, armor acts as a damage modifier reducer when you get hit. You still lose HP, but having armor severely reduces the amount of HP damage you take. The armor itself slowly wears away unless replaced. In World War II Zombies, it's different in a lot of ways. You see, it doesn't actually act as a damage multiplier barrier. It lives underneath your base health bar, so if you take a hit, it first reduces your regenerative HP, and if that's depleted, each subsequent hit you take while your HP is dead is a hit of armor that takes away each swipe, unless recovered by your health bar. It's actually kind of an inverse of the modern armor system in a way. Not to mention, armor cannot be replaced by zombie drops. The only ways to replenish armor is by either using a field ability that restores armor on use, or by buying it from a Geist Shield location, which will permanently increase in price each subsequent purchase, which can get very problematic in high rounds, to say the least. Either way, it's the first ever implementation of armor in zombies, and it's an interesting approach because it still means that moment to moment, it's more about damage avoidance primarily rather than damage mitigation, because you lose your regenerative HP first before your armor, which means it's much more advantageous and rewarding to be skilled at moving and maneuvering around zombies. I think the only reason World War II doesn't get blamed more with the removal of Juggernog was because it was non-Treyarch. Because as soon as Treyarch did it in Black Ops 4, all hell broke loose, obviously, but I digress. Anyways, these changes and additions mean that zombies would still be pretty familiar to longtime fans, but there were some new mechanics and content with it to learn and how you would change and how you would think about the game. And it's experiments like this that led to the path of what we now see more in modern zombies gameplay ideas. When it comes to maps, World War II Zombies only had a single map on disc. Well, I guess technically two, since the house in the prologue level became its own survival map, so we'll start there because it's the most small scale and simple one. Groston House is a small cabin we played in the prologue, except this time around, there's no way out. It's as pure as surviving until you die. Very much feels like the early days of Noctur Untoten, this small cramped space against infinite waves of the undead with limited resources. You do have a handful of wall weapons you can buy, an armor station, and even a perk machine upstairs, but it's basically one machine for all. The perk machine in Groston House specifically has 6 perks, but unlike the Wonder Fizz in Treyarch Zombies, you don't get the option to decline the perk. You just interact with the machine and you get whatever you get. And since there's a 4 perk limit, or 5 with a Raven upgrade, you're always going to be in a situation where you're missing at least one, and it's completely up to chance whether you're missing something like the melee perk, which you can definitely do without, or something more essential like Quick Revive or Double Tap. And for some weird reason, there's a pretty long cooldown on buying perks, even if you have the money. The machine literally has to cool down before you can buy another. And no, it's not round-based either. You can literally just walk the last zombie around for like 2 or 3 minutes and then buy another. I have genuinely no idea why there's a cooldown timer for the perk machine. It adds nothing but slows the game down to a grinding halt at times. But other than that, the perks function exactly the same as in the normal maps. So with some guns, some perks, and so on, you can actually survive and have a decent time holding out in this map. but just like in the prologue version, this house holds some more secrets. You might have noticed while you're playing that there is a handful of lanterns around the map. A lot of them are inside, and when shot, you can hear ravens in the distance. Some lanterns are in plain view, and some are outside the map in various spots. But after shooting about 8 or 9 of these lanterns, the secret room upstairs opens up, revealing the mystery box that you can now freely spin. This already opens up a ton of new strategy, as there are some really cool things you can get from the mystery box. But if you get the item Jack-in-the-Boxes, these behave like monkey bombs in Treyarch Zombies. But when a Jack-in-the-Box is tossed at this upper beam with a playing card on it, it will explode. And then finally, if you donate a small loan of 10,000 jolts to the piano, from here on out, all of the weapons now that come from the mystery box will be pack-a-punched when you take them out. I think this is incredibly cool because they could have just as easily added the bare bones features to this map and called it a day, but they went out of their way to add a small quest to have permanent pack-a-punch, taking the experience a little bit farther if you want to take it farther. And this allows you to survive much longer waves. But it's still a hard map because it's so cramped. But if you survive to round 50 in this house, you get a special boss zombie to spawn, the Brenner. And this is quite a welcome offering to World War II because some of the maps can be kind of a chore to set up on, but this really is a pick up and play survival map that not only gets the job done, but really offers you deeper gameplay the closer you're willing to look at it. And this is only a mere taste of what the main maps in the game have to offer, so let's finally take a deep dive into those. I can never stress enough how important it is to get your launch map right. Your first impression is everything and will most likely be the most played map overall in the game. Sledgehammer understood this well with the Final Reich, as this is the first main map you can play. It takes all of the themes and horror and terrifying tones they were going for and places it squarely on Middleburg's shoulders. What appears to be just this sleepy town quickly becomes something much more sinister the deeper you dig. Now, I want you to really absorb and pay attention to the atmosphere and gameplay decisions here, because Sledgehammer initially came out of the gate swinging when it comes to these horror elements. These creepier aspects and the scare factor were front and center stage with this map, yet for some odd reason, you'll see as we go that each subsequent map afterwards would stray farther and farther away from the pure horror tones that were established here. These aren't relegated to just the visuals or world design either, as the map starts off like any other normal Zombies game. Round 1, you begin and start to explore this quiet town of Middleburg. You need to turn on the power in the town, and you can start by turning on these gas valves. The Final Reich really wanted to sell the unpredictability and scariness, so in some random occasions, zombies may or may not pop out at you during these valves, which, or when quietly walking around the map, these can jump out at random moments. So these zombies jump scares weren't a guarantee. You might get them once or twice, but honestly, they do get old pretty quick once you've played the map a bunch of times. And I think Sledgehammer kind of knew that too, as this random zombies jump scare mechanic never really went farther than this map, and it's pretty unique to the Final Reich. Speaking of things that are unique to the Final Reich, this does something that is still one of my absolute favorite ideas for zombies ever, and has never actually been attempted in the same way, even in other World War II maps. So for those who have played the Final Reich, you'll know that this map has a notebook for a guided main casual quest. Honestly, not too dissimilar from directed mode in Black Ops 7 Zombies. This notebook quest takes you through a journey in the Final Reich where you turn on the power in the map, and once you do a full loop of Middleburg, you turn on the power, and then you get access to the vault door, where you then discover an entire secret laboratory and facility where these grotesque experiments by Dr. Straub are going on in an attempt to create an undead army for the Reich. The facility houses the heinous experiments that present themselves as the map's special enemies. There's the Whistling, which is this massive, slow, and lumbering zombie with a spiked club for an arm that deals tons of damage. These are pretty strong to bullets when shot head-on, so it's not very effective, but they can be enraged and then will charge at you. But if you're able to avoid the charge and get around, they always have a weak point on their back that can be exploited to kill them much quicker. The other two kinds kinds of special zombies you might encounter is the bomber, and these are two zombies stitched together with the one on the back carrying an explosive. If you shoot the second smaller head in the back, the bomber can be disarmed and be much less of a threat to you. And then you have the map's what would be dog rounds, and they are pests. These are kind of like regular zombies, but they're a bit faster, so you have to be mindful as they will run you down if you're not moving quickly. Turning on the power to the facility not only gives you a tour of the rooms in front of you, but it also gives you access to the salt mines, where the Hands of God and the statue of Barbarossa can be found for the quest. The next part has you forging the Tesla gun, the map's main wonder weapon. It's a really cool moment when you actually begin the transport to get the parts. All of the lights in the facility go out, really playing into that horror atmosphere, and they genuinely capture the uncomfortableness and just downright unsettling vibes. It's one of the most memorable parts about this map is building the wonder weapon and surviving this sequence. You have to kind of transport the carrier on a soul box, but before you can build the gun, once you've gotten all of the parts, you actually have to face off against the Brenner, a massive zombie with a flamethrower and a ton of health. This elite zombie can be killed and exploited by shooting the exploding flame tanks on his back, and once you kill him, he will leave behind a Brenner head that you can pick up and walk around with. The notebook guides you to power up the clock tower, and then finally you got to put some batteries in from a Zeppelin in the sky. You got to take those all the way downstairs in the salt mines to the Hands of God, and when you do that, then you need to take the Brenner head that you got and find some secret messages written on paintings around the map. You then put those numbers into the God tones and then play them in front of the statue, and then you activate the final step. You activate the hilt and then shoot it with the Tesla gun, and finally you have to overcome one last hurdle by defeating the boss, the Panzer Mortar. The Panzer Mortar is the final encounter in the guided notebook quest. In this boss fight, you have to apply the basic gameplay mechanics you learned about earlier to defeat him, as he has no traditional health bar. You just have the upper section of the town to work with as well, and you need to shoot down the batteries from the Zeppelin in the sky, as you did earlier, to charge up those batteries with zombie souls. But this time, instead of taking it downstairs, you have to also deal with the Panzer Mortar, and if you've managed to actually charge a battery, you then have to deal enough damage to shoot the Panzer Mortar down, and then while he's stunned, you can place the battery on his back to hurt him, and you got to do this in 3 phases to complete it. Between each phase, the Panzer Mortar will leave for a bit and then come back later with the Zeppelin. It's not exactly the hardest fight in the world by any means. It just requires a lot of patience and some smart positioning, and then when the third and final battery is placed on him while he's stunned, you'll defeat the boss and the map's cutscene will play. Afterwards, on a successful run, you'll be given the sword hilt and a perkaholic. For most people, that's enough of an experience to have thoroughly enjoyed themselves, but believe it or not, that's not even the map's Easter egg. The Final Reich is very unique in the way that it has this main quest, so to speak, this casual quest, the notebook one I just described, but it also has a proper Easter egg quest as well, with some overlapping and some completely brand new steps to complete it. Something that you'll not experience at all in the notebook version of the quest is the upgrades to the Tesla gun. You see, the 4 wonder weapon formula would make a return here in this opening map, and I kind of think it's appropriate for the experience that they wanted to give their starter map. The Tesla gun has its base variant, which is really easy to build, but it also has some unique versions: the Midnight, the Bloodthirst, the Hurricane, and the Reaper. These are all different elemental variants with unique properties and effects. In order to do the hardcore version of the Easter egg, it requires all of the Tesla gun upgrades to be completed. Now, I will say, some upgrades are easier than others, and if you've tried this Easter egg yourself, then you know what I'm talking about, but they all have, a one-of-a-kind mini quest associated with their upgrade. Outside of that extra legwork, you also need to do a handful of more obscure steps, like shooting a small yellow dot that a weather vane points to. You need to find 3 different keepsakes around the map and then put them on the toy wall, and then find their corresponding enigma codes to tilt them in that direction. You then need to turn the power back off to find fingerprints in UV light, and then you need to decipher musical organ clicks from a secret record player. Doing all of these things, and in addition to all of the notebook quest steps, will bring you back to the Panzer Mortar boss fight, and it's not even any different to the standard one, really. The boss battle and cutscene are identical, until finishing the quest where you save Klaus, and instead of him dying, he's actually alive and gets up, and you can escort him through the zombies, and you'll get the different achievement, A Dark Reunion. This is the map's actual Easter egg, which its execution may have some flaws and balancing issues, but the concept of having your main story-driven quest, i.e. the casual quest with the notebook, and a hardcore, proper hidden Easter egg is so appealing to me, and it's what I wish Modern Zombies was doing, as they're honestly so close to getting there if they wanted to. Strangely though, none of the other World War II maps took this approach. They have Easter eggs, among other things, but the guided notebook quest for a more casual and relaxed experience for players never actually materialized again. In terms of other features though on the Final Reich, there are many small secrets and neat things to uncover. For example, you can actually get the classic Treyarch PPSH from placing money in a couple of different bowls around the map, because you can actually drop jolts in this game, which you really can't do in any other Zombies experience. There's a whole bunch of unique traps in each area of the map, and sometimes when you're opening the Pack-a-Punch machine, at random occurrences, the room will be bathed in a red light, and then you'll be swarmed by a horde of pests. This map is decently sized, but the flow of the map can be a little clunky at times. For example, the clock tower area, outside of first opening Pack-a-Punch and then that one quest step, there's really no reason to ever venture to this spot of the map. Getting from one point to another can take a little bit of time, but overall the Final Reich is a fantastic starting map with an incredibly special configuration, with its blend of casual story-based quests for the average player, along with survival, but also lots of more obscure and difficult Easter eggs to make your experience deeper if you are a more dedicated player. This was probably best case scenario for an introductory map, as the Final Reich was very well received by the overall community, which then would fans eagerly await how they were going to follow up with DLC 1, and that would manifest as The Darkest Shore.
It's too soon for us to be back in the field. Rideau was wrong to send us out.
Yeah. Anybody else wish you hadn't survived the train wreck? Oh, shit.
I watched you at the briefing. You don't like this place.
What is it? Rideau said you'd been here before.
Yeah, well... this place has got some history. Poking out of the sea like Lucifer's middle finger. No surprised Stroke came here to this piece of shit island. I'm just wondering why we followed him.
We need to find the rest of the sword before he does. We need to...
We know why you're here, Marie. At least this time you're not pretending to care about our cause.
This is different. We should have heavy fog all morning. If everything goes well, nobody will fire a shot.
Yeah, why have things ever gone well for our little tea party? Oh, shit. Oh, shit.
Stay close. Let's move, people.
Where's the other boat?
This damn island. This goddamn island!
Calme-toi.
Optimistic, darling. Oh, I can't believe I'm saying this. I wish we were back in Germany.
Okay, I have to come clean. I need to admit that I do have a really weird affinity for the Darkest Shore, and that's mostly because it was the first time in history I was ever invited to play a Zombies map early. We went to this World War II airplane hangar where they had like the setups for us, and we got to play a game of the Darkest Shore before official release. And it was just kind of a really cool thing for me to do. So I know I have some bias with this map as it does feel special for those reasons, but more objectively coming back to it, I don't think it's nearly as good of a map as the Final Reich was, and it makes some downright baffling choices to me. It's a really weird map. It's also a big departure from the formula that they went for in the Final Reich as well. The Darkest Shore doesn't have a peaceful, quiet spawn-in. Instead, you get this chaotic moment on the beach where you're instantly swarmed and rushed by this initial horde in which you have this like MG42 on the beach that you can fight them off with. It's a really great, tense, and visually striking moment, I must say, but after you clear the beach, then round one proper begins. The Darkest Shore deviates from the Final Reich immediately, as getting the power on and pack-a-punching is much less time-consuming and way more straightforward now, as it's as simple as a couple basic power switches for the whole island, and for pack-a-punch, it's as easy as riding the minecarts down a couple different paths and collecting these tubes to power the elevator that contains the machine. But despite this more streamlined approach to the basics of gameplay, this is where the map stops being simple, as you no longer have any notebook quest to follow. The map is far more enclosed as well, as opposed to some of the more open and forgiving play spaces of the Final Reich. It actually has a very similar structure to Shangri-La, where it's skinny pathways and tight corridors. This does genuinely increase the difficulty of just the normal gameplay, but to add to this, it also has a map-specific feature where every so often fog rolls in, and this can be really bad for you, the player, as you have extremely limited visibility, and the map's mini-boss, the Moischlers, are actually the most horrific and terrifying spider-like zombies that rush down from the fog and attack you. They are extremely fast, and they strike quick and then retreat, making them a real threat during this fog. And on a personal note, I just think that they are visually the most unsettling enemy design in the entire franchise. I love their look. It's terrifying. Now, as bad as this is, you can actually use the fog to your advantage as well, as it makes it harder for normal zombies themselves to find you, as they'll stumble around for a little bit and be far less aggressive. Fog has always been a weird mechanic to get right, and between the Darkest Shore, Transit, Call of the Dead, and so on, it certainly elevates the atmosphere if nothing else. Now, since the Darkest Shore has no notebook quest, you can still find things around the map that guide you towards specific objectives. You might find a ripsaw part around the map that you can then craft at a table, substituting out the 4 wonder weapon formula of the previous map. This time, it has just one weapon. The ripsaw is a very easy and straightforward thing to initially build, and then you can further upgrade it and then fire buzzsaws as a projectile. This is the first true step to the Easter egg as you cut down a head near the Pack-a-Punch machine, and then you could place it on this body holding the gate. This is one of the most gnarly moments in Zombies ever, still to this day, and at this point, Sledgehammer were still truly leaning into the horror elements. Say what you want about the gameplay, but World War II Zombies, if nothing else, does have a distinct feel and flavor to all of their maps, and the Darkest Shore isn't terribly big. It's not even really half the size of the Final Reich, and it's laid out decently well, especially with the minecarts allowing you to reach difficult to reach places, making the flow of the map not too bad. And because the map isn't huge, many of the Easter egg steps are localized to the same locations. Some of the Easter egg steps stink though. They took a page out of, Revelation's book and made us shoot literal random rocks again. Yippee. However, there are some kind of cool steps you can do. You unlock a secret room in the minecart tunnels that after a bomber zombie explodes on like a certain part of the wall, you can go into the secret ritual room, and then after placing 3 Sons of Nerthus into the slots, you get access to this playable, really small, but ultimately unsettling room. It's so visually cool. Now, you wouldn't really come here for general gameplay. It doesn't have really anything to do besides quest stuff, but it looks awesome nonetheless, I think. And another part of the Easter egg has you shooting down lots of planes out of the sky with an AA gun. This step does feel like a little unpolished, but it's kind of fun. And then you gotta escort a terribly slow bomber zombie all the way to the flat gun on the other end of the map, and then place some battleship. And while you're doing this, Dr. Straub makes a Return of the Jedi reference.
Oh, I'm afraid the island defenses will be quite operational when your friends arrive.
One of the things I noticed when revisiting World War II Zombies, and particularly the Easter eggs, is that the vast majority of the steps require a really annoying amount of precision to do. Like, I get having some steps that can be challenging to the player and require some mechanical prowess, but at the same time, some of the things you do for steps need to be ridiculously precise. I started to notice that on the Pest Buzzsaw step, where you have to bank shot saws off of these like different colored charge fuses, but it gets way worse than this in later maps. You basically have to spend the whole quest using the ripsaw to get a charged spine from almost every zombie type and then doing a task associated with it. The problem is, getting something like a Moishler spine can be really hard since they annihilate your health bar and shields, but you have to get them just low enough HP to finish them off with the ripsaw to then pull their spine. But without any health bar indicator to see how much HP they have left, this is kind of guesswork and can be a little bit frustrating, but also even if you do this, you're not guaranteed that the spine from the Moishler will even be charged in the first place, rendering it unusable. Again, challenge is one thing, but so many of World War II Easter egg steps are actually just built to be kind of irritating. After acquiring all the Sons of Nerthus and then getting all of the anointed zombie heads from their respective challenges, you get to the pommel tactical item, which you then need to throw at the radio to initiate the boss fight. Here's the thing, the Darkest Shore, in theory, has one of, if not the hardest boss fight in COD Zombies, or at least it can be. And that's because it has a long, drawn-out, multi-phase boss with multiple powered-up Moishlers and fog throughout. It can be, and usually is, an actual nightmare, especially for solo. But there's a handy little gun called the Delisle that wasn't in the game at launch, but got added sometime after that you can get from the mystery box that completely breaks this fight. See, normally you go to 4 different sections fighting off zombies and multiple Moishlers, but with the Delisle, you can shoot the ground, and every 5 seconds the bullet explodes, dealing massive headshot damage to all enemies. Meaning if you stack this with Frontline's triple damage modifier, you can nearly one-shot these, and if not, you can follow up with your secondary to pass each phase. It is still a challenging encounter, no doubt, even with the broken gun, especially in the boat pens area where the floor is actively trying to kill you, but with enough patience and persistence, you should be able to get through this no problem. It's way easier in a team as multiple people can then take boss aggro, but solo, they will all converge on you at the same time, and it can get pretty overwhelming. Defeating these special Moishlers gives you a full perkaholic and the map's ending cutscene.
Now, people, now!
isn't.
You've got to be kidding me.
I told you we were fucked! Trostin told you!
Well, there goes the cavalry.
Yeah, we've gone from bad to worse, mate.
He's bringing his army to Britain.
No, something's wrong. We're not going to England. Straub has other plans.
Looking back on it now, all nostalgia aside, despite me really appreciating some things that I guess I hadn't before, it admittedly does have some really cool stuff, but I can't honestly say that the Darkest Shore is a particularly good map to me, and it doesn't even come close to what was so appealing and works about the Final Reich. I don't find the Ripsaw Wonder Weapon all that good or even exciting. I do enjoy the design and kind of just the basic mechanics of the Moishulers a bit more than I remember, but outside of that, I now remember why the Darkest Shore wasn't exactly my favorite. And if the launch map is the most important one in the game, the DLC one is nearly just as important. And to me, it falls a bit short of what I would have wanted from a map like this, especially considering how good the start was. As many of you, I'm sure, probably know, Call of Duty World War II had some serious development troubles. Mostly after the game had already launched, the leads on the project, Michael Condrey and Glenn Schofield, both departed Sledgehammer just a few months after the game dropped. Following that, massive changes would overhaul the entire multiplayer experience, and the game's direction completely shifted. This would affect Zombies 2, albeit in a less obvious way. During some of these World War II capture events, I got to have conversations with Cameron Dayton, the lead creative director, and many of the devs of World War II Zombies. Now, I know this is kind of like inside baseball and not everyone will find this stuff interesting, but I feel it's really important context and explains a lot of what happened to Zombies from this point on. So from my understanding, during the leadership turnover at Sledgehammer, the Zombies team went from around 40-ish people to less than 10. This was a huge loss, as many of the things they wanted to do simply weren't possible anymore. For example, I remember asking Cameron Dayton about double Pack-a-Punch in World War II Zombies. It was something that myself and the entire community really desperately wanted, and I was told that they would have liked to, they just simply didn't have enough time. Also, maps, I've been told there were different plans for the DLC. There was supposedly an Egypt map that was supposed to come after the Darkest Shore instead of what we actually got, which was meant to be DLC 3. Either way, whatever the case is, World War II Zombies staff and budget was severely cut during the DLC lifecycle, and that would have a very obvious effect in due time.
Hey, you need to see this!
Berlin. Straub has come home. Those were Russian forces moving in. Looks like they're burning the city to the ground.
Yeah? Well, the Ruskies aren't ready for what's coming. Nobody is. We need to get off this ship and wander.
Attention! The hatches are opening! Get down here, now!
Yeah, you think I'm riding a bullet down to Berlin? You've got another thing.
Get down!
The Shadow Throne, as I had mentioned prior, I'm not sure was supposed to be the DLC 2 map. Also, I noticed that in the intro cinematic, Jefferson can be seen saying something here, but the line of what he was saying is cut. I wonder if it had anything to do with the different context of another map or something. If so, it doesn't really matter, it's just something I noticed this time around. Either way, the Shadow Throne is a map that takes place in Berlin, in the very center heart of the town. It's a really interesting layout of a map because in some ways it's actually very classic, having a center point right in this area of town with a few offshoot areas to connect it all. And while it's a fairly easy and straightforward map to navigate, unlocking the map's main features such as Pack-a-Punch and even the Wonder Weapon are anything but. We're used to now just unlocking Pack-a-Punch after doing something relatively simple, or even as easy as simply entering a room and then it's there. I remember being at the early capture event for this map where we had 1 hour to play, and nobody in the entire play session managed to unlock Pack-a-Punch in that 1 hour. That's because you actually need to get the Wonder Weapon first in order to unlock the Pack-a-Punch machine, which is a bold choice to make. You have to go up to this radio and note what's on the side, and then you need to go over to this map in the back of the church and read where your red pin is at, and then match those numbers with frequencies that then need to be entered into the radio to contact the Russians. You really can't interact with any of the map's features until you've done this. From this point on, the Zeppelin in the sky will periodically shoot down a bolt, striking a zombie and turning it into a sizzler. These are the Shadow Throne's new special enemy type, and they're really annoying if I'm being honest. Sizzlers get buffed with super speed, meaning they will always inevitably outrun you unless killed. This is fine in the early game, especially when you're just surviving and attempting to build the Wonder Weapon, but this can become a very aggravating mechanic when trying to do main Easter egg steps that require you to stand still for long periods of time. You are required to build the Wonder Bus first in order to get Pack-a-Punch with a battery and spike that can be acquired from your very first Sizzler. Once you get that, the Wonder Weapon can shock the 2 panels around the elevator containing the Pack-a-Punch. The Wonder Bus fires an electric beam, but then can alternatively fire a harpoon that pins into zombies, both damaging them over time and restoring ammo to the weapon itself. And it's necessary for just about every Easter egg step. The Shadow Throne actually does have a pretty fun quest, one I consider much better than the Darkest Shore to be. You have to unlock 3 different unique melee weapons, a baseball bat, a knife, and an axe, and they're all acquired in their own unique ways. One you get from a smuggler, you have to give him the right gun through this port in the ground, then you knock on the door and a whistling answers. Another you get from a soul box that you fill up, and the knife you get from that extremely finicky and annoying safe. See, in theory, none of these steps should be all that hard, but for example, when you're doing even more Morse code frequency to get the knife, and then you have to input those numbers that you get from the radio into the safe, you can't actually save a regular zombie to do this, as it will just inevitably become a sizzler given enough time and force you to kill it. The only thing you can do to try to save a zombie is hold a bomber or a pest, as they cannot become sizzlers. Outside of a few particularly annoying and even just time-wasting steps, the Easter egg itself is honestly quite fun. For the final act before the main boss, you need to get all those melee weapons you acquired and then fill them up with particular zombie souls when they fit in, and this reveals a secret garden area underneath the church. In here, you have to do a statue puzzle and place these golden ravens in the proper order around Barbarossa. There's a really interesting solver for this puzzle, and it's really not that difficult to repeat, and it's a pretty cool step. And then you'll be given the blade and access to the final encounter. One thing I really appreciated about Sledgehammer's approach to zombies is the real attempt to make an interesting and genuinely novel boss encounter. You have to use the Wonder Bus in this fallen drop pod in the middle of town, and using all of the ammo on that will pull you directly into the Zeppelin that's been looming above you the entire time. In here, you have to start by guiding electricity along a circuit path so that it opens and accesses all areas of the arena, and then you get to see what befalls Dr. Straub in his own laboratory.
What? This isn't possible! This is not possible! Stay away! Do you hear me? I created you! No!
Right after this, the real boss, the Stadjäger, enters the picture. This is again a multi-phase boss fight in which you have to not survive only the undead, but also the Stadjäger and his increasing arsenal of attacks with each phase. In Phase 1, the Stadjäger can only be damaged when he charges at you or is glowing orange. Once you know this, it's not really a problem, but I do feel like this boss's openings are not telegraphed in a great way. Like, you don't even get any hit markers when shooting him, even if you are doing damage. In the second and third phase, it's kind of the same, only in Phase 3, he can only be damaged by the Wonderbuss beam while he's surrounding himself in this toxic cloud. I actually don't mind the Stadjäger from a design standpoint, and I would say I really dislike the lack of feedback when shooting him. At no point are you ever really sure if you're dealing damage or even how much. If you didn't know any better, you'd have no clue that you're making any progress in this boss fight at all. You just have to kind of know what you're doing beforehand, trust the process, and rinse and repeat until it eventually stops trying to kill you. It makes for a somewhat less satisfying boss encounter than it could be with just a little bit more visual and audio feedback, in my opinion. But after finishing off the Stadjäger, you leave the Zeppelin and the cutscene in the town rolls.
Folks, this is gonna be a bumpy ride. Hit turn, everyone!
Outside of the main Easter egg, the Shadow Throne is kind of like Final Reich in that it holds many more secrets to be found, and you can get a really fun and unexpected mini jump scare from the woman on the bed by playing her song on the gramophone. You can even acquire the previous 2 maps' wonder weapons only by specifically typing in a hangman word on the theater board that gives you access to both of them. This will give you the Ripsaw and the Tesla gun. In my eyes, the Shadow Throne has much more of what makes World War II Zombies so special and shares more of that DNA with the Final Reich than it does with the Darkest Shore. The quest is neat and it's fun to play, and even though, the new Sizzlers can be really annoying and actually cripple the experience a little bit more than it helps, I do think that the boss fight is thematic and tense, but could do with some minor improvements to elevate it just a bit higher. It's a solid map, not quite as good as the Final Reich in my eyes, but arguably quite a bit better than the Darkest Shore. But if you thought that there weren't any major twists coming in the season, you would be very mistaken, as this would all change in the next DLC.
Nobody saw this coming. The horror of this new military force, a force composed entirely of the dead, is torn across the face of Europe. It has fallen on us, the newly formed Bureau of Archaic Technologies, to be the tip of the spear in this fight. We are woefully outnumbered. We cannot match this enemy blow for blow. But with the help of our new allies, we will strike where they are most vulnerable. We will be smart. We will be fast. We will be lethal. But we must do more than simply kill our enemies. We must utterly destroy them.
Alright, I'm not even really sure where to start with this segment of the video. Normally I'd just be introducing DLC 3 or whatever of the game and it would be similar to the other maps we've done, but that is not the case here, at all. Whatever on earth was going on at Sledgehammer Games and that turmoil most likely contributed to what released as DLC 3, and it's not even a map per se. Infamously, the third DLC map pack for World War II contained something called the Tortured Path. This isn't a map exactly, although it kind of is. It's more like its own game mode with its own set of rules. It even made the menu system even worse, as the Tortured Path now has its own menu option and is not a submenu in the Nazi Zombies category. The fact that it's called the Tortured Path is not hyperbole. In fact, it is probably the most appropriate name you could give to it, and it's given me the absolute displeasure to be able to show you guys categorically by far the worst Easter egg of all time. The Tortured Path, now that I'm thinking about it, could easily warrant an entire video all on its own, but to understand and really grasp what I'm going to lay out to you here, the Tortured Path is essentially a journey of 3 different submaps. You have the Bodega Town, or whatever it's called, a ship called the USS Olympus, and the Altar of Blood temple location. Each submap is also playable as a small survival experience after you've completed the Tortured Path once. Okay, simple enough so far, right? Now, let's talk about how the Tortured Path is played by default. So you start by loading into the first submap, this town. It's kind of like a small MP map size-wise, and there are features rearranged from the real Zombies maps. The pack-a-punch is here, the perks are here, wall guns give random weapons of a particular type, and then you can also unlock more classes as you pass more rounds. Now, the rounds only go up to 10, and that's not so bad, you might be thinking, but this is no mere survival map. This is one of the first true objective-based modes in Zombies that we've ever seen. So, for example, on round 3, you're going to get a random objective to complete, maybe escorting something, defending a crate, killing an HVT, and so on. Rounds 3, 6, and 9 have objectives that must be completed, and if they are failed for any reason, you get a defeat screen and the game automatically ends. This can be especially brutal on getting like a round 6 defend objective, as there's just far too many zombies and you can't get pack-a-punch until round 7. If you get this particular combination of objective, it's pretty much a GG at that point, and you may as well just wrap it up. But with enough persistence and a bit of luck, you should make it to round 10 where you need to kill a shielded Brenner, and this has to be broken first by the Zeppelin strike to be vulnerable and then killed within a certain amount of time. This is doable for most players. The second map after you successfully exfilled out of there at that point is kind of more of the same deal. You slowly go through the process of unlocking Pack-a-Punch, you get your perks, you do your objectives that are randomized and sometimes map specific, and then at the end of the boat map, you have to face a Stadjäger and kill that off too. Still not too bad, right? Especially if you've gotten lucky objectives and things have generally gone in your favor. But you do the same thing here, you survive until the exfil, and then map 3 begins, the Altar of Blood, which is also a small map with similar features, Pack-a-Punch, perks, and so on. Now, you do all your objectives, you survive the normal waves without making any mistakes or failing, and then you face off in the final boss fight here on round 10. This boss fight is super cool. The giant drops down from the blood altar and these spouts, and after you damage him a little bit, he will retreat back to the center of the map where the blood pool is to heal up again. You have to quickly destroy the blood spouts before he gets too much back, and then you can deal even more damage as he'll be stun locked. Even under suboptimal conditions, this fight is very winnable and it's not too challenging. And then if you exfil from there, great, you beat the Tortured Path and can feel a great sense of accomplishment from all the things you overcame. And then you get the ability to play all of these maps as survival too. As far as objective modes go, it's obviously pretty rudimentary and unpolished and quite unbalanced, but it's still somewhat playable. Playing it like I just described really isn't too bad, and in fact it's meant to be kind of a replayable mode. If you didn't know, the Tortured Path also has its own ranking system apart from the normal Zombies prestige rank, and your Tortured Path rank grants you a damage multiplier that is permanent. So for instance, when you hit max rank 50 on the Tortured Path specifically, you now deal 200% more bonus overall damage in the Tortured Path. And that can be stacked with weapon-specific attachments you get for random guns that add another 10% to your weapon, meaning the more you play the Tortured Path, generally speaking, the easier it should become. But don't get too comfortable, because all of that I just described had nothing to do with the Tortured Path's Easter egg, and this is where it gets downright insane and why I introduced it this way in the video. So, you know how the mode works. You have 10 rounds with a handful of objectives that must be completed with no mistakes or failures. As far as the Easter egg goes, you need to do all of that, but even more tasks on top of round-specific moments. So let's start with the first map again. In addition to all the normal gameplay stuff you have to do, you also need to shoot down this rope off of a tree and then collect 6 different zombie body parts that have 30 different spawn locations.
To the right side. The 23rd location is going to be turning around. It's going to be located inside the wheelbarrow to your left. The 24th location is going to be located to your right inside the house to the left inside the fireplace. The 25th location is turning around. It's going to be located on top of the bookshelf. The 26th location is going to be located to your left inside the wood debris. The 27th location is going to be located to your right in front of the door on top of the ceiling hanging down. The 28th location is going to be located outside the house to the left side inside the fire pot. The 29th location is going to be
You then need to raise up the tree and grab the rope from it. But if you're just a millimeter off on the tree, then the next part of the Easter egg won't work and you'll have to reset. And keep in mind throughout this whole thing, if you fail anything, and I do mean anything, a regular objective or any little Easter egg step on any map, you must start all over again. Meaning if you make it all the way to map 3 without making any mistakes whatsoever, and you get a bad objective and fail, you must start all over again from map 1. After you've collected these zombie body parts, you then have to place them on a windmill, but it has to be stopped perpendicular to this door frame perfectly, and it can't be a little bit off. So what is the strategy for this?
And you're going to wait until the white piece of the blade reaches this leaf if you're on mouse and keyboard. As soon as you see it about to reach or touch the leaf, then you're going to quickly turn around and then you're going to place the arm inside the window as fast as possible. That is exactly the lineup that you want. Now to get the blade perfectly lined up if you're playing on controller, you're going to want the white part of the blade to be on the leaf right here on this leaf, because on controller you have to hold down the interact button and place the arm inside of it.
Doesn't this sound like so much fun? Even if it's just a tiny bit off, it won't count, and you have to let it spin around again and try once more. If you do get it, then great. Do it again, but this time reverse so that the zombie is now up in the air. And then after you've done that twice, the lightning will strike the zombie, and then you need to escort that zombie who is slow as hell, and if one bomber touches him, he'll probably die, and then you need to restart all over again. Oh, also, don't let him die in the house, or the battery will fall through the map and you'll have to start all over again. Use the battery to get the sword, you get a free perkaholic for about 5 seconds, you kill the boss, and then you go to map 2. Once you're here, it's the same idea. You play the map as intended, you do the objectives with one major twist. You melee this battery so that it changes your FOV and kind of makes you dizzy. Also, the zombies now teleport at you as well. Wonderful. Then you have to escort a fish to 3 battery locations and get kills there. Oh, also during this, make sure that you're still doing all of your objectives and getting lucky. Now, it's at this point that unironically the coolest moment of the tortured path can be played, and remember, you cannot make any mistakes before or after this moment or you must restart if you want the completion. As soon as you finish the 3rd soul box, you get transported into an underwater jump puzzle section, and this bit to me is so great that it might make the entire tortured path worth playing just for this moment alone. When you get here, you navigate different platforms that all resemble the prior maps. You first have the Final Reich section with the massive vault door and the dolls and all of that Middleburg stuff. And then you go to the Darkest Shore and you see Straub and the Sons of Nerthus on the sandy beaches of the island. Then you go to the Shadowed Throne, you see the Zeppelin overhead, you see Straub's death, the cheetahs, and so on. It's such a visually appealing moment and genuinely interactive and enjoyable as well. It's moments like this that is like a diamond in a sea of garbage that is the rest of the Easter egg. This bit ends though by having you play a game of finding the fish in the bucket 3 different times, and once you do that successfully, you'll go back to the map and finish your objectives as normal, kill the Stadjäger at the end, and then exfil. And the final map is pretty much just as involved as the prior. You may have noticed this massive wall of runes if you've played the survival map, and here you need to find and enter codes, but by the way that it's designed, it's actually more effective to just brute force the codes rather than actually looking for them how they're intended, as they only appear on even rounds. Other than that, you just have to kind of collect some parts to build the sword in the main blood pools in the center of the temple. This is probably the easiest map in terms of the Easter egg, but better hope you don't get a bad objective or anything, because then it's back to map 1 for you and start all over again. Assuming you actually have done all this and have made it up to round 10, you then must defeat the giant once again. If you manage to do literally everything I laid out and defeat the final boss with no mistakes either, then congratulations, you beat the Tortured Paths Easter egg. And for all your hard work, once you reach max rank, you get rewarded with the Darkened Path. If you activate this red skull, it then initiates a hard mode of the Tortured Path you can play, just in case the regular Tortured Path isn't enough to drive you to get a mental health evaluation. The Tortured Path is no normal map. They basically remade the entire damn game. They changed the rules into a roguelike objective-based mode. To this day, I'm not really sure what they were thinking or why they made this Easter egg so tedious and easy to fail. There are so many moments that they could have changed it to make it slightly more forgiving. Like if you fail map 2, for instance, you don't reset to map 1, you just continue map 2 and try again. Either way, it's tedious, and I would be genuinely shocked if more than a few hundred people ever worldwide completed the actual Easter egg, because it's that out of the way. But by beating the Tortured Paths quest, you do get a special cutscene.
Very subtle, yeah. I don't need any more warning. It's been a grand visit. Thanks for the memories. Be sure to write. But now it's time to leave. Pity to lose such a find. Lots of answers down there. Answers to questions I hadn't even thought to ask. All gone.
No, not all gone. Didn't you read the markings on the wall? The cuneiform inscriptions? Come on, Professor.
You could read that? I mean, I recognise the pre-Byzantine characters, but oh, hell, I couldn't make head nor tails. Hey! How is it that you're up to your arse in undead ghoulies and still have enough sense to translate the prehistoric scribbles of a lost race?
Team arrived from New Swabia yet?
Unconfirmed, sir. Task Force 68 lost contact with them over Thurston Island. And we've lost Paris. Azim is pulling out with survivors.
Damn it. Have Captain Lien move her ships west and begin a search. Priority 1, we need that sword.
Sir, what is the sword going to do? We're outnumbered 10 to 1.
That sword is the key to all this. The Nazis have opened the door to hell on Earth, and we're gonna close it.
Now, the finale of World War II Zombies I don't think is exactly what Sledgehammer Games had in mind from the start, map-wise, and I don't know what the original plan for the last map was technically supposed to be, but I think you can tell from the Shadowed Throne that they were starting to let off the gas a little bit in terms of the horror stuff and the, dark and scary aspects that they had been building on in prior maps. By the time you got to the Tortured Path, you could really grasp the more adventure and fantasy elements shine through a lot more in the gameplay and world design, but the Frozen Dawn takes us from a crashed plane site into the underground city of Thule, and this is where it really crystallizes the fantasy stuff, because the horror at this point is pretty much gone. A logical step aesthetically from the, Final Reich Altar of Blood map, visually these lead right into one another, as directly from the spawn area outside in the snow takes you into the ice tunnels of Thule. Right away, you get a really picturesque view and grand sense of scale for the place that you're about to go. But in my opinion, especially compared to where we started with the Final Reich, the Frozen Dawn, you can tell, almost has no horror elements left, and instead substituted them all for outright fantastical and mythological themes. This is reflected now not only in the map design, as you have essentially one main loop from the spawn area, and each location has some kind of puzzle or clues as to how to acquire the map's more hidden secrets. secrets. Leaning a bit more on the Final Reich's design choices, however, the Frozen Dawn also features 4 brand new upgradable wonder weapons for the bulk of its main Easter egg. Each weapon predominantly stays in its own area to upgrade. There's the shield, the scythe, the flail, and the hammer. Once again, as to be expected in maps by this point, no notebook quest or any particular guidance, but upgrading each weapon consumes the majority of the legwork for the Easter egg. Upgrading the flail, for instance, has you finding constellations in the sky and teleporting it with its grenade that you hold in your offhand. The hammer has you charging it up when eventually you are worthy to approach it, and then literally walking off of the map on a blind bridge off into a trial room, which teaches you how to use the weapon and its capabilities, particularly shield breaking. The scythe, on the other hand, needs to be charged with zombie souls and then cooled down in a blood pool ritual room, and the shield must be charged off the new special zombies. The Frozen Dawn does actually introduce a new enemy type into the mix. These are called corpse eaters. They're very powerful and agile zombies that will consume other nearby enemies to power up, rendering them extremely dangerous if not taken out quickly. But in my opinion, these are the least memorable special zombies that got added. Maybe it's just because they're only on this map, and even stuff like the Tortured Path would reuse, other boss enemies from prior experiences, but they're honestly not even that hard to deal with here because they don't have a ton of health. But other than for the shield upgrade, they're actually not really used for anything or serve any other purpose in the Easter egg, so they're just kind of there. There's also a lot of puzzles in the Frozen Dawn. The Raven puzzle on the wall and the Cipher puzzle with the orbiting planets, which are visually awesome to look at, but also just reflect again how much World War II Zombies had totally changed its tone from when we started. It might be the prettiest map in the game though, I will say that, but you can still tell that it definitely suffered from budget and staff cuts, and there would have been plenty of ways to elevate the experience had they had more resources to dedicate to it. To this day, I'm surprised that throughout the whole DLC cycle, not a single brand new perk or even any Raven research mods were added post-launch. Anyways, upgrading all 4 of the wonder weapons and completing the map's puzzles would finally give you access to the boss arena and take you into the grand finale of World War II Zombies to face down the God King once and for all. The God King is both a really amazing boss fight and a particularly strange one at the same time. For starters, I love the arena that it takes place in visually. It does feel like this grand moment where all of your hard work has been leading up to, and in theory should be one of the most challenging boss fights in the entire game too, as the God King has a pretty large moveset and is extremely powerful on his own. However, the way it's made is that it's also one of the most easily exploitable bosses as well. For example, when the map first came out, players learned that you could just lightly toast him a little bit with the flamethrower that you get from a consumable and essentially one-shot the entire encounter. This would obviously be patched in time, but to this day, there are still some other ways to completely break this boss and just bypass a lot of it too. You can run this frontline mod for extra melee damage when it's active and just slash away at the God King's feet for like a minute and then completely just win the fight. And what plays next from dealing enough damage to wear down the God King in his own fight back down to his throne, the final cutscene of World War II Zombies rolls.
The ravens have returned, God King. Your grave beckons. Stand and receive your destiny, Raven Lords. You are all that stands between life and death.
And now, our 4 main characters have become the Raven Lords. whatever that actually means. I'm not a storyline expert or anything, but obviously the Raven Lords and the Raven imagery and research has been building up to this point from the very start in the Final Reich, which is a nice, satisfying, full circle moment, even if you don't quite grasp everything that's going on. Slaying the God King means that you beat the ultimate threat, and you can continue playing in the map, and you can even still hang out in the boss arena, which is unlike a lot of Zombies maps. But that would be, the ultimate conclusion and story finale to our cast and characters in this game. The Frozen Dawn is actually a better map than I remember it being, and it also has some really weird and obscure side Easter eggs, like having to throw grenades of different colors around a blood pool. It's a real pain in the ass. It takes like 25 minutes to do, and the only thing you get as a reward is a double points. Now, I will say that even though the game's been out for almost 10 years now, with the obscurity and opaqueness of many of these Easter eggs that they intentionally made, I wouldn't be surprised at all if there are still some undiscovered things about many of these maps. They really did want to, make it more appealing to the casual market, but simultaneously bring something rewarding for players who spend hundreds of hours dedicated to the game. Ultimately, the Frozen Dawn is a very unique map, and it's honestly not a bad ending at all. It certainly ends World War II Zombies on a high note. Even though the Frozen Dawn would be the official endpoint for World War II Zombies, as it were, it would not be the end for other Zombies editions elsewhere. I used to love when Call of Duty would try to find a way to integrate aspects of their third mode into the multiplayer, when traditionally these things were very separate. It's not really the same when they do it nowadays, but back then, as World War II's multiplayer got more and more unconventional as time went along, that came with a plethora of Zombies-related modes. Hardpoint, for example, is a spin on the classic MP mode, Hardpoint, obviously, and it still plays by the exact same rules, with the only difference being that zombies now attack both sides. It's just kind of a sillier way to play the standard game mode, and it's a lot of fun. There was a specific map in the war mode that was essentially a secret testing lab for the Reich that housed, Die Glock and all sorts of other experiments, but in this map you could obtain the Tesla gun as a special weapon in this multiplayer map, which was a really special thing to do. Another thing I felt was worth mentioning is that I told you that I played all of the DLCs when this game came out, and I did play it, I guess, somewhat regularly, but not nearly as religiously as like Black Ops 3 or something. So when it came time for like post-launch, I guess I didn't realize how many brand new weapons they added after the fact when all the maps had come out and stuff. They added a ton of weapons to the mystery box, and some of them are just genuinely really cool and special, like the Delisle we talked about in the Darkest Shore. There's also a gun that has a blue Pack-a-Punch name tag instead of the standard yellow, and it shoots blue bolts, and it also has unlimited ammo, but it gives you a random amount in the magazine every time you reload. It's just like weird, quirky, really cool guns that do something special, because the initial offering of World War II's, guns and their roster wasn't honestly anything to write home about. So the post-launch guns really make up for it. There's like over 50 weapons in the box. It's crazy. But when World War II was in its prime year, I do feel like the game struggled a bit. In fact, players like myself and a lot of people went back to either Black Ops 3 for Zombies during that year, or were just playing other games. World War II Zombies struggled to get a massive player base because everyone was playing that little game called Fortnite. Yes, World War II had its hardcore audience, and still kind of does, and it did not deserve some of the hate that it got, but at the same time, Sledgehammer clearly struggled to keep control of this project and consistently bring the quality and depth of features that they were showing off in their first map. In my head, I imagine World War II Zombies could have been much more focused on its original vision of horror, having a notebook casual quest for each map and a hardcore Easter egg just like the Final Reich, adding some new perks or map-specific features and ones that the community needed, like double Pack-a-Punch, as they went on, could have made this something really incredibly worthwhile by the end. World War II Zombies was the very first game I really got to see it from the inside, and I saw just how much they struggled with this one post-launch. On an individual map basis, it's a pretty solid game, but the batting average, however, is heavily weighed down by the tortured path and just the havoc that caused on the rest of the experience too. But I would be completely lying if I said that I didn't enjoy myself or find it worthwhile to come back and play this game mode again, because World War II Zombies, no matter what, is incredibly special for the, really novel ideas that it had for zombies as a game mode. We don't really quite get this novelty and difference in ideas between studios anymore. But sadly, if you were one day holding out hope for a World War II Zombies sequel or something, it's most definitely not going to happen, or at least not in the way that a true sequel would need to be, because Glenn Schofield, Michael Condrey, and Cameron Dayton, the lead project creative lead on Zombies, they have all left Sledgehammer by this point and have been long gone for quite some time. Sledgehammer could still technically try to do it, it just wouldn't really be the same without the creative leaders still behind it. So I wouldn't expect a sequel to this. I mean, it's been nearly 10 years at this point and we haven't seen one. Highly doubt it would happen, but again, just like some of the weird off-brand things like Exo Zombies or even IW Zombies, it's just kind of interesting that even though they didn't get a follow-up, they exist in the first place and you can appreciate them for what they are.